Om. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvi Shavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudirayet. Yesterday we were doing this verse where we stopped at relative and absolute Shuddhi. I'll just read a few paras before that. The vision of non-difference between Ishvara and Jiva. This was Vita Raga Bhaya Krodaha Manmaya Mamupashritaha Bahavo Jnana Tapasa Puta Madbhava Magataha. Just give me a second. I will read this verse 10 one more time. Vitaraga bhaya krodha manmaya mamupashritaha bahavo jnana tapasa puta madbhava magataha. Free from craving, fear and anger, totally resolved in me, taking refuge in me, purified by the discipline of knowledge, many have come back to my nature. We have seen that the one who knows Krishna in reality knows that there is no real birth, janma, or action, karma, for the person. And if there is no real janma or karma, then who is that person? Here, the person cannot be Mr. Krishna who is born at a given time and place. So too for everyone. He or she can only be Paramatma. Thus, Krishna says, the one who knows this reaches me. So that me there is not Mr. Krishna, it is Paramatma. To know Krishna in this way is to know oneself. Ishvara cannot be understood by one who is a jiva, an individual, who does not know the identity between oneself and Ishvara. The limited individual is not going to know that which is all-knowing, omniscient. Even to spell the word omniscient is a problem. Therefore, the most that can be said is that Ishvara's knowledge is not limited. So to even understand what that unlimited knowledge is, with our limited mind, we cannot get there, right? So all-knowingness, sarvajnatva, can never be understood by an alpajna one with limited knowledge. That is why no matter how much we try to understand with our little logical mind, we fail to get the expanse of the Sarvajnatva. Which is why what we have to do is clean up our inner equipment and then wait patiently for that knowledge to dawn. While pursuing, of course, Shastra or Vedanta. So, but Sarvajnatva is only in relation to Alpajnatva. Both limited knowledge and all knowledge are adjuncts, upadhis, with reference to each other. The division between them being due to upadhi alone. Krishna's statement, only the one who knows the Paramatma reaches me, is to be understood in terms of the Paramatma not being separate from oneself. Krishna had said this before and is merely confirming it here before picking up the topic of sorrow. This knowledge had been around since the beginning, Krishna tells Arjuna, and people had always been reaching him in this manner, by knowing. There was nothing new about it. Here again, Krishna says that any number of people have reached him. Bahavaha madbhavam agata. And why is it that everyone does not reach him? There is no difficulty involved in reaching him. But first, one has to recognize that he must be reached. And having recognized this, how is one going to reach him if one is driven by one's cravings, fears, and anger? In fact, there is nothing to reach because one is already Paramatma. The question, therefore, is how far one's discerning power extends and what is it that one is choosing. In this verse, the people for whom the craving, fears, and anger have gone away, Vita, Raga, Bhaya, Krodhas, are described as those who have reached him in terms of knowledge. What is the nature of fear? We have seen that raga is the craving for objects, and that once raga comes, dvesha in the form of dislike and avoidance is also there. And what is the genesis of raga? How does it come? Whatever you hear or you see, someone has told you, oh, there is this nice movie. The moment you hear about it, that is it. Your mind goes on thinking about it, and then you develop a desire. Oh, I want to watch it. In chapter 2, the 62nd to 64th verse. Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kamaha. So initially it is the thought, and then you develop an attachment towards the object. Once there is the attachment, there is a desire to possess it. Sangat sanjayate kamaha, kamat krodho bijayate. So if there is that obstruction to that fulfillment of the desire, what springs up is krodha. Krodad bhavati sammohaha, then you get deluded. Sammoha smriti vibhramaha. You lose the memory of who you are. Smriti bhramshad buddhinashaha. And your, whatever, that intellect is gone. Once your memory is gone for a siksa, buddhinashat pranashyati. And once that buddhi, that viveka, that intellect is gone, there is destruction. So we have therefore seen that raga is the craving for objects, and that once raga comes, Dvesha in the form of dislike and avoidance is also there. So one solution to not get into this raga is, Swamiji had mentioned, give it 24 hours. Think about it. Do I really need it? So then you're nipping it at the bud of, at the level of the attachment. We all hear lots of things. We all see also lots of things. But rather than develop that into an attachment following which the desire sprouts, if we can give it some time, give that gap between the thought and developing that attachment, then we will slowly release the hold that before it gets into karma, it just dies down as just a thought. Even if it comes down as a thought, even if it continues as attachment and becomes a raga, let it be a non-binding raga, not a binding raga. Because binding ragas are the problems, is the problem. So that these two always go together, and being powerful are binding in nature. So once raga comes, along with the tail of raga is dvesha. So they go together. Because what you like to happen is so strong that if that does not happen, then it takes you to dislike. So fear, bhaya, then becomes inevitable because there is always some apprehension with reference to one's ragas and dveshas. Every raga is fraught with fear of the undesirable unknown. This is all that a binding desire or like is about. When there is a binding raga dvesha, such as this must happen for me, that is raga, this must not happen for me, dvesha, how can there be absence of fear? There is always the fear of things not happening according to one's expectations, because raga implies expectation. And whenever there is expectation, there is a possibility of it not being fulfilled. And when this happens, there is a sense of failure. Fear of failure will always be there because one is not omniscient. That things do not always go our way is very clear to us. What we need to understand, therefore, is that fear of the undesirable unknown will be there as long as we are driven by our ragas and dveshas. So beautifully brought in, right? So how to tackle all these three? Because fear is an offshoot of raga. So if you're able to handle the raga, which means also dvesha, then automatically the bhaya is taken care of. When you're not worried about the consequences, you're not so stuck up with the result of the action, then where is the fear? That will get diluted, right? The nature of anger. And so see, if you're able to tackle just one thing, just that raga, all these others will just, that's why you hold on to one chair, one leg, the whole table moves. So same thing with our knowledge points. When you follow one thing properly, all the other knowledge points will automatically be, will, will come into practice. The nature of anger. Just as raga dveshas are fraught with fear, they are also fraught with anger, krodha. If a raga is not fulfilled, one's desire, kama, turns into anger against whatever is preventing the desire from being fulfilled. If the obstacle is another person, someone who is standing between you and what you want to accomplish, then your karma turns into krodha. If a binding karma is not there, there is no krodha. But if you think a certain thing must happen and your life will be incomplete if it does not happen, you cannot avoid anger because your raga is binding. In the wake of the obstruction that is preventing you from fulfilling your raga, there cannot be but there cannot but be anger when your raga is binding. The karma itself turns into anger. Thus, krodha is also there when one's life is controlled by raga dveshas. Whereas, when one lives a life of karma yoga, the raga dveshas are neutralized. By paying attention to his or her raga dveshas with the right attitude, a person becomes vita raga bhaya krodha, meaning one who's relatively free from desire, fear, and anger. These are the people Krishna is discussing here when he says, they become one with me. Manmayaha bhavanti. These are the people who have the vision of Ishvara as essentially non-separate from the jiva. The vision of non-difference between Ishvara and jiva. So let's just do a bit of manana on Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha, right? Before we go on to this next segment, I would request everyone to share their understanding before we go forth further. So Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha. So if you're able to handle our ragas, which is why I think Buddha said misery, uh, life has misery and desire is the cause of misery. So we have these three knots, the primary knots, no? Avidya, Kama, and Karma. These are the ones that bind us to samsara. So how do we get rid of this avidya? By knowledge. So by exposure to this knowledge, see, when you compare a person who's not exposed to this knowledge versus all of us who are exposed to this knowledge, at least there is some understanding that yes, I consider myself limited, I consider myself insecure, and I'm reaching out to the world outside to make me secure. But the truth and the fact is that I am complete, I am full. It's just that we have not got that aparokshanubhu. We've not got that full, we're not liberated yet. I'm talking of myself. So the whereas a person who is not exposed to this knowledge at all is still reeling in the world, very gross, and so there is not even that understanding. So the first step is to tackle that little knowledge needs to be there. Avidya, for avidya to completely go, you'll have to wait, purify your antakarana to such an extent that knowledge then dawns. But till such time that antakarana is still to be purified, at least that mumukshutvam should be there. That is why you have mumukshutvam as one of the four pillars of knowledge. Viveka, Vairagya, Shamadhi, Shak Sampatti, and mumukshutvam. Just having mumukshutvam is not enough. We must develop our viveka, discerning capacity, how far our discerning capacity is. And then vairagya, dispassion. If we are not dispassionate about the results of our actions, we'll get caught up with binding. It's a binding raga. And therefore, along with that will come krodha. Along with that will come fear of the unknown. Because we have limited knowledge, we do not know the consequences of our actions. So therefore, fear comes in. But if it's a non-binding desire, you are fearless. Doesn't matter whether it happens, doesn't happen. If it happens, you're not extremely elated. If it does not happen, you don't get totally deflated. So, by practice of karma yoga, we slowly get to the stage of Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha. So, the vision of non-difference between Ishvara and Jiva. There is no real difference between the Jiva and Ishvara, any seeming difference being brought about by Upadhi alone and therefore Mithya. Since this difference is Mithya, non-difference is Satya, which is all that counts. This vision of non-difference, Abheda Buddhi, the vision of the identity of Jiveshwara reflected in the statement, you are that, Tattvam Asi, is made clear by further analysis, Manana, and contemplation, Nididhyasana. So, how do we proceed further? From, first of all, getting exposed to this knowledge. So, you do Shravana. First is Shravana, first step. And then is Manana. Important. Analyze what you've learned, discuss, and then contemplation, nididhyasana. So when we internalize all these concepts that we're learning, and we keep bringing it back to the seat of at the seat of meditation, when you reflect upon them again and again, then all those seeming obstructions that obstruct our identity with the true self, they will start getting released. Those obstructions no longer will exist. So Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. Those people in whom this vision is clear are referred to in this verse as Mam Upashritaha. Those who have totally resolved into Parameshwara alone. For them, there is no longer the mistaken notion that the jiva is separate from Parameshwara. The self is Paramatma, the one who has no doubt whatsoever with reference to this particular vision is called Puta, meaning Shuddha, absolutely pure. You know, the word pure itself has so much of an uplifting kind of um, a sense of. And Puta, pure, a lot of similarity between Sanskrit and the English version. In such people, there is not even a dash of impurity because the self, being Paramatma, is always pure. The self is not rendered pure, it is pure. If the self were something that had to be rendered pure, some impurity would always be there. So it is self-luminous. It is not that you have to remove the dark. What we have to do is just remove that veil of darkness, and then the self will shine. The self is always there, is absolutely pure. So you don't need to purify the self. How do these people become pure? By the purifying fire of knowledge. Jnana tapasa. Why? Because what is covering this is the veil of ignorance. I think it was chapter 3, where there are three examples were given. The smoke covering the fire, the तेनेदमावृतम् आवृतं ज्ञानमेतेन ज्ञानिनो नित्यवैरिणा कामरूपेण कान्तेय दुष्पूरेणानलेन च. That was say 1 second.
Was it a mirror being covered by dust
Right.
and
Correct.
this
Correct.
this thing?
Correct. So how the smoke covers fire, I did not remember the mirror example. I knew there were 3 examples given. The mirror covered by dust, and then the womb that is covering the fetus. So was that? Sri Bhagavan says, when Arjuna asks, Atakena prayuktoyam papam charati purushaha anichanna pivarshneya baladiva niyojit. What is it that impels people to commit this papa? And then Bhagavan says, Kama esha krodha esha rajoguna samudbhavaha mahashano mahapapma vidyena miha vairinam धूमेनाव्रियते वह्निः यथा दर्शो मलेन च यथोल्बेनावृतो गर्भः तथा तेनेदमावृतम् आवृतं ज्ञानमेतेन ज्ञानिनो नित्यवैरिणा kamarupena kaunteya dushpurena nalena cha. And indriyani manobuddhi asyadhishtana muchyate etair vimohayatyesha jnanam avritya dehinam. Tasmat tvamindriyanyadav niyamya bharatarshava papmanam prajahihyenam jnana vijnana nashanam. And then he says, Jahi Shatrum Mahabaho Indriyani Paranyahu Indriyebhyah Param Manaha Manasastu Parabuddhihi Yo Buddhe Paratastu Saha Evam Buddhe Param Buddhva Samstabhyatmanamatmana Jahi Shatrum Mahabaho Kamarupam Durasadam. So these are the last few verses of chapter 3, where Krishna says, Bhagavan says, it is how this jnana is covered by these three aspects. So the more gross one is, it is like the fetus being covered by the womb, not even visible. But if you have to just a little less gross than that is the mirror covered by the dust. So a bit of cleaning is required. You need to put in that purushartha there. But when there is a lot of cleansing you've already done, the attachment is not so strong. It is just a little bit of blowing off of the smoke. You will be able to see the fire. So the fire knowledge is already there. It only needs to be uncovered. And how? Jnana tapasa. And how do these people become pure? By the purifying fire of knowledge. Jnana tapasa. Knowledge is the means, the sadhana. Tapasa here means by the fire of knowledge. By the discipline of knowledge, these people become pure. And how does one become pure by knowledge? The knowledge is that the self has never performed any action and therefore is not guilty of any action. Nor is it subject to any hurt because it is not and never was an object of anyone else's action. Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. Neither does the body kill, nor is it killed. So neither does this body act, does the self act, neither is it the object of another person's action. Since the self Atma is neither the doer of action nor the object of action, it is always Nitya Shuddha, eternally pure. Such a liberating feeling, right? So it is not guilty of any action, nor is it subject to any hurt, because it is not and never was an object of anyone else's action. How often we get into this hurt cycle because someone said this, someone said that, or someone did that, right? So it is not that. It is neither an object of another person's action, neither does it perform any action. The people being discussed in this verse were already Vitaraga Bhaya Krodhas. They already have the necessary preparedness of mind, the Antakarana Shuddhi through Karma Yoga. It should be noted, however, that this Antakarana Shuddhi can never be absolute. There is always some Ashuddhi in the form of Raga Dveshas. Remember, these Raga Dveshas are like the 1,000-headed serpent. You tackle one, another arises. So you never know from last several lifetimes how many of them are embedded. It is only through given situations. That is why we continue to act. Because when you're performing action, you never know what raga sprouts up, what dvesha comes up. So then you have an opportunity to practice karma yoga and then neutralize that. So that cleaning process is a continuous thing. But so therefore, there is always some ashuddhi. Despite you having antakarana shuddhi. This is to say, whatever antakarana shuddhi that one gains through karma yoga is always relative. Absolute shuddhi is never achieved, but can only be understood. It's a matter of knowing, it's a matter of knowledge, because Atma is absolutely Shuddha always. Whereas relative Shuddhi, Antakarana Shuddhi, is something that is accomplished in the mind. Relative and absolute Shuddhi. Relative Shuddhi is a process of growth, a process of maturity, wherein a life of alertness, discipline, commitment, and prayer is involved. Such a life is a life of purification, and being a process, it takes a certain length of time. Absolute Shuddhi cannot be a process of purification because the impure can never become pure by any amount of purifying, no matter what the process is. The self, which is absolutely Shuddha, is already pure. Purity means freedom from raga dveshas, punya papas, freedom from everything, in fact. This purity is the nature of Atma, Atma being nirguna, free of all attributes, akarta, free from doership, and so on. And those who know this are also pure, utas, meaning that they have understood the fact that as Atma, they are eternally pure. They are madbhavam agata, as Krishna puts it, meaning they have come back to be me. This coming back of Bahavaha, so many jivas, is to be understood in terms of the identity between jiva and Ishvara. It is not that all these jivas have come to Ishvara and are sitting upon him, nor has he collected them all to him, so that they have become an integral part of his heart or his being. This particular knowledge reveals the fact that the jiva is Ishvara. Those who know this fact are called jnana nishthas, because not only they have gained the knowledge, they are well established in it. Reaching Bhagavan is not dependent upon any tapas other than knowledge. Thus, to say purified by discipline, tapasa putaha is not enough. The word jnana has to be added because there are other forms of tapas. So that's why it's called jnana tapasa puta, madbhava magata. What are the other forms of tapas? Kayika tapas and vachika tapas. Bodily discipline and discipline of speech. Tapas, penance of speech. The pursuit of knowledge is the primary tapas. The word tapas refers to any spiritual or religious discipline. For example, a person who chants the Gayatri mantra for 6 hours is said to be doing religious tapas. A person who observes silence for a length of time is also doing tapas, providing, of course, he or she is doing it for religious purposes as a mental prayer, for example. However, to keep quiet purely out of consideration for others is entirely different. It is not tapas. I will read this again, but let me just continue. So when a person is performing a spiritual discipline like contemplation or studying the Shastra, it is tapas. Swadhyaya, study of the Shastra, is considered to be a great tapas. Therefore, those who are committed to listening to the Shastra, Shravana, and to self-inquiry, Vichara, are also doing tapas. And although there are many forms of tapas, to become established in this knowledge requires only jnana tapas. The pursuit of knowledge is the tapas. The word jnana is prefixed to tapas to show that jnana nishtha does not depend upon any other tapas. This is because moksha is not anything other than being established in this knowledge. There is no other moksha. For moksha, you require knowledge, and for knowledge, you do not require anything except vichara, inquiry. Thus, the pursuit of knowledge itself is the means. Then what about all the other disciplines? They are all meant for preparing the mind so that this knowledge can take place. This is where Arjuna got stuck. He kept saying, Krishna, you're telling me jnana is ultimate. Why are you asking me to do this terrible action? But his mind was not prepared yet. Therefore, he had to continue to do his action. So all these other disciplines, mental discipline, the discipline of listening to the Shastra, doing Swadhyaya, doing all your other actions, fulfilling your roles and responsibilities, is so that the raga dveshas can be neutralized and your mind can be prepared. This is what is meant by purification of the mind or antakarana shuddhi. Therefore, the other disciplines are all secondary means, whereas knowledge is the primary means. So that is the last straw. To say that these other disciplines are secondary is not to say that they have no place. The distinction to be understood is that these other disciplines are indirect means for moksha in that they prepare or purify the antakarana, while the pursuit of knowledge is the direct means for the knowledge that is moksha. Does everyone come back to Ishvara? Because Krishna uses the word bahavaha, many here, Arjuna could assume that only some people come back to Ishvara and others do not. The word bahavaha being plural can refer to any number of jivas, starting with 3. So bahavaha means at least 3. In Sanskrit, there are 3 numbers, that is singular, dual, and plural. And therefore, the plural indicates 3 and anything more than 3. So ekam, dve, trini. And it's, sorry, that is the numbers, numerals. But you have three, um, 3 numbers. Whereas in English, we have only 2. Singular, plural. There is no dual. Whereas in Sanskrit, you have dvau. So there is the second, that is, there are 2. The 1, 2, and 3. 3 numbers. So the word bahavaha being plural can refer to any number of jivas starting with 3. The point here is that even if it is just 3, a million or more, a finite number is implied. Arjuna may therefore have asked Krishna, why does he not allow everyone to come to him? To such a question, Krishna have only have answered, I can only take them to me if I am separate from them, but I am them. If we were separate, perhaps there might be something I could do about it. But since they are non-separate from me, what can I do? It is not a case of my having to bring them to me, because I am already identical with them. There is nothing here that I have to do. As Ishvara, they can invoke me, and in whatever form they invoke me, I bless them. Whatever they desire, they get. Therefore, I am not to blame in this particular situation. I do not have any raga dveshas to fulfill in this matter. Nor do I take names out of a hat every day to see that some people suffer and some people remain happy and so on. I do not follow any such rule. In this way, Krishna paves the way for the next section in which he explains how Ishvara is free from any kind of blame with reference to what happens in one's life. Otherwise, we would be left asking why Ishvara blesses one person and not another, and why he is so partial.
Can you read this paragraph again?
I'll read the whole thing one more time.
Oh, hmm.
We have 10 minutes. So, we started today by
Bahava, that word Bahava, can you explain again?
Bahavaha means many, more than three. So that more than three can be just three or it can be a million. So I will read this part one more time. Relative and absolute Shuddhi, okay? Relative Shuddhi is a process of growth, a process of maturity, wherein a life of alertness, discipline, commitment, and prayer is involved. Such a life is a life of purification, and being a process, it takes a certain length of time. So this is what Karma Yoga is all about, right? It is a process of purification of the Antakarana.
Jai Gurudev, here alertness is awareness, right?
Correct, correct. Being alert. See, in that example of Dhumena vriyate vannihi yatha darsho malena cha yathol benavrito garbha tatha tenedamavritam. So just a little bit of alertness is enough for people who have already done enough practice. Whereas a little bit of discipline is required when you have to clean the mirror. You have to have a say on your senses. And then a little more dhriti, commitment, prayer, all that is required when the covering is thicker, like the womb covering the fetus. So where you stand, at what level you are, it depends on what tapas you have to do. But primary tapas, endpoint becomes jnana. All these are secondary means. We'll come to that, right? Absolute Shuddhi cannot be a process of purification because the impure can never become pure by any amount of purifying, no matter what the process is. The self which is absolutely Shuddha is already pure. This is such a beautiful understanding. The self is blemishless, nirguna, and it is Shuddha. It is nirmala. It doesn't have mala at all. So you don't need to purify the self. That's the wrong thing, wrong concept. Self is already purified. What you have to is purify the equipment with which you realize the self, where knowledge dawns. Purity means freedom from raga dveshas, punya papas. Freedom from everything, in fact. This purity is the nature of Atma. Atma being nirguna, free of all attributes. Akarta, free from doership and so on. And those who know this are also pure, putas, meaning that they have understood the fact that as Atma, they are eternally pure.
So relative purity is about the antakarana.
Yes. Just by having a clean mind, that is relative Shuddhi. Right? Whereas absolute Shuddhi is
that is always pure.
Is the self, right?
Brahm.
Is the self.
Jai
So when there is
Gurudev.
that, yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead, Brahmaraj.
No, go ahead, Bella, please.
No, I just wanted to make this example of fetus and the womb. It's as easy as that. That when the fetus is coming out, it is crying out of insecurity. But once slowly, when he realizes that I'm a part of this whole, I was in the secured place, and I am also now. Also, I'm in the secured place, in the secured hands of my mom, who is me only. In the same way, Ishvara is also, we all are from that Hiranyagarbha, and everything is Him only. And that realization that comes, it doesn't require any effort. I mean, it is as natural as that. That when the time comes, it comes out, and the layer is removed, the code is disconnected, and you, but still you know that you are a part of that whole. So it is as easy as that, where I think there is no effort required. It happens automatically. Jai Gurudev. We feel insecure and we cry like that fetus, assuming that we have we are in pain, we are in that insecurity, out of our ignorance that we are now we do not have I am out and I have no shelter now. We feel like that once the fetus is out and it cries, right? I don't know exactly but this is what that as simple as that. Mirror and other example where you need some effort, and as you said, for cleaning the antakarana, and they it means the effort. But the example of fetus, just now it struck me that it is so effortless when the time comes, and still at the same time the fetus knows, once slowly he recognizes his own mother, that she is the one who has been nurturing me in and out. And that security, that the easiness with which he takes the rest of the things. Yeah, that is my.
Very nice correlation that, it's a beautiful thing that in order to gain that knowledge, nothing is required at all. But what is required is preparing the mind. So that preparation is what is all this karma yoga is all about. In the example you've given, when the implied meaning is beautiful, but the literal meaning is still, there is a difference between the baby and the mother. There is still dual. Whereas here, what Vedanta is talking about is non-duality. Jiveshwara abheda buddhi. So there is no difference between Jiva and Ishvara. That when that realization comes, then there is no that is what is meant by them reaching me. But it's a beautiful analogy you've given, Bela, to say how, um, which is why they say love is the first thing that dawns, which from divinity, the first manifestation of divinity is love. And that is what is visible in the baby. Soon after the baby is born, the way the baby attaches to the mother. How does it happen? And that's because of that love. And that is the first visible expression, manifestation of divinity is love.
Also, Didi, I would like to add here, like, while Didi was saying, Bela Didi, I could realize that crying of the child is that the process that the child is going through of, clearing the mirror, like what we are saying. And when the ignorance that I am not separate, the realization comes that, yeah, I am here, I am the same, mother is here. Like when it becomes one, then the child is, with in love and completely happy and satisfied and silent. The calmness
Yeah,
comes.
yeah. You can understand it that way also. other
Yeah.
way of looking at it. All the tapas that we do,
Yeah.
all
Tapas. The
kaika,
crying part.
vatika, manasika tapas is like the crying.
Yeah. The ignorance that we are also in, that we keep crying, for until we realize that we are one.
Mm,
Until the child realizes, yes, we are one, the mother and me.
mm. Nice, very nice. See, the same can be looked at from different angles. Oh, we have just 1 minute left. So we will not be able to complete the complete reading of this, but we'll stop here. We'll go through this one more time tomorrow. Purity means freedom from raga, dveshas, punyas, papas, freedom from everything, in fact. We'll stop here. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. Jai Gurudev.
Thank you.